for your own time, you want to talk to people in group because you only have 24 hours. We agreed on that. And this is coming on top of your regular schedule, which is already full. So it helps a lot if you're going to be coaching or to mentor these people in groups. So have, third pointer, create fun activities. Create fun activities. Don't let these sessions be lectures. Don't go and tell them we are going to be meeting here every second Saturday, and on second Saturday you stand up and preach at them for 2 hours and then you allow them to go. They will not be absorbing much. Find common interests. Human beings learn when they are having fun. So if you enjoy soccer, maybe go and watch soccer with them. If you enjoy cooking, go and cook with them. If you go, whatever it is that is fun for you guys to do. Make sure that you're doing those things on a regular basis where your schedule can allow, so that then they will learn from you. So find shared activities. The fourth pointer is similar to the third one. Keep it fun. Keep it fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't use big professor words when you're talking to your mentee. Use regular language, crack a joke. We said already you're going to open up yourself to them. You're going to be able to tell them what's happening in your own life, because they're learning more from your example than from what you're actually saying. All right? So make it fun. Just joke with them. Make sure you're not being looked at. In that relationship, you're really not their boss. You're really not their head of department. You're just a trusted friend. So keep it fun. Allow yourself to be to crack a joke and something like that. And number 5, similar to that again, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. All right? Don't let this relationship be, almost where you had to write a contract. This is our relationship and this is the terms and conditions of our relationship. When I call you, you must answer in the 3rd ring. That is taking yourself too seriously. Let it be light. Let your relationship with your mentee be light. All right? To summarize all of those pointers, remember we said that you are mentoring because you are mentored. You're paying back. It is your rent to the universe for being here. That you're giving of your time and of your information and of your energy to mentor another person. So if you are keeping that in mind, then you will want to know that it becomes a lifestyle. It's not something that now becomes cast on stone, that I can only mentor 3 people and I can mentor them over a period of 2 years. There are really no hard cast. There are no rules that are cast in stone of how this goes. So you will want to be flexible about those. Now I want to talk about a few pitfalls that you want to avoid, and then I will be done here. The first one is this: avoid the desire to be adored. Avoid the desire to be adored. Don't create sycophants. Don't look for people who will sing your praises. As human beings, we already agreed in the earlier session that you won't seek reward, right? Sometimes we have a relationship with somebody and I like to think of it as the village star. Don't look to be the village star. Have you ever seen a village star arriving in the village? You want to stand taller than everyone else. You want everybody to see you arrive with your car windows down. You want nimefika. That's a pitfall to avoid. Don't look for people who will adore you. All the time singing your praises. Whenever we get, you have to say, oh, I want to thank my mentor who is here. I actually don't even allow myself to be called a mentor. There's who called me a mentor. I told you the sad story of how a pastor told me I was their mentor. I told them I did not apply for the position. Because there's a lot of responsibility people put on your head when they call you a mentor, right? There's another guy, and I said I do regular videos every week. And so people will reply and comment and tell me you said this and it touched me. And there's a particular young man who kept on referring to me as a mentor, and I had run a training program for the organization. That is how he had picked up my contact. And so he will be, good morning, mentor. This, that. This. When he always started, and eventually I told him, my name is Christine. And he put a smiley face because he got the message. Don't have people bow before you, That is not what you're looking for. Because I can promise you, tell me if you agree with me, if somebody is being sycophantic around you, you're really not reaching them emotionally. True or false? Mm-hmm. Remember we said for you to be able to mentor somebody, you need to make an emotional connection. Am I making an emotional connection to someone I'm literally kneeling down to? No. I can't open up to them because I'm putting them on a pedestal. The reason we are saying allow yourself to be vulnerable, the reason we went through all those pointers was you want to make an emotional connection with this person and you can't do that while they are adoring you. Alright? So the first pitfall you want to avoid is avoid the sycophancy that will come. The next one is don't be too stringent on the schedule. I know that I have said in the how-to that you want to create regular meetings, but don't let this be cast on stone. If somebody calls you on a weekend, if somebody calls you out of your regular scheduled meetings, that actually is a good sign, isn't it? Yes. Because it means that you are my go-to, you're my first call. You're my first call. I've actually just remembered an example. Let me go back to the first point about sycophancy. Now, I do not know the church that you go to, so I'm not attacking your church. True? Mm-hmm. Please allow me to say this generally. Churches have become a business in our culture. Now, there is churches where the pastor and his wife are referred by the whole congregation as mom and dad. Mm-hmm. You go to that church, I don't know your church. Okay? I'm just making an example here. But at one point, we are with family members. We are in a big group and we are traveling down Mombasa Road. And there was some kind of a riot in one of the two towns that you go through. Okay? There was a bit of a riot. There was the armed forces were there and everything. So you know how a traffic jam will quickly... Yes. So you are stuck so that you can't even move. And you are hearing gunshots in front of you. So it was quite frightful. But me, I was sitting there thinking, if I'm dying, we are dying and we are out of us. Yeah. And look, there's a lot of cars and things. We are dying here, we are many. But I remember there was a niece of mine who was with us in the car who called their pastor. Actually, now the mom pastor, not the dad pastor. So there's mom and dad. Mm-hmm. She called the mom pastor. Oh, pastor, I don't know what to do. No, she's calling her mom. Mom, we don't know what to do. We're in such trouble. We're in so much trouble. You know, sometimes you magnify the problem. Mm-hmm. We're in a lot of trouble. We are stuck in this traffic. We are in what. She was paralyzed to think. Her relationship with this lady is one of a mentor and mentee. Would you agree with me? Mm-hmm. But she has been trained to not think. She has been trained to not think. I will very rarely tell you to pray for me. I will pray for myself. Thank you very much. If God knows you, He knows me. Oh, please, Pastor, pray for us. We are in so much trouble. She's crying, an adult. I'm thinking, we are in a car, we are full. Your aunties and uncles are here, parents are here. Why are you crying? She is literally crying. We're in a van. We are quite a number of us coming from a trip as a family. She was so frustrated. But what struck me was her relationship with her mentor was one of adoration rather than one of mentorship. There's people who literally call their pastors to come, and I'm using this as an example. I have nothing against Christianity. I'm sure we are in agreement there. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to attack anybody or anybody's belief. But there's people whose belief is there is God, then there is the men of God, and then there is us. Some kind of hierarchy like that. That doesn't actually mentor somebody. That does not mentor somebody, which brings me to my third pitfall. Don't create a crunch. Don't create a crunch. Don't be the crunch on which people walk. Okay? Do not. You are mentoring somebody to become a mentor. This is how you know you have done well as a mentor, if your mentor becomes a mentor. You've had each one teach one. If we use that policy, the whole university would be touched in a matter of weeks. Again, I'm reminded of an example that happened one day in church. I was sitting in one of the bigger churches in Nairobi. And the preacher said this: we don't have a lot of Christians in Nairobi. And I was startled. You know, even if you are not paying attention, you'll be like, what is he talking about? I'm in a big auditorium. You look around, you're like, what again? He said, if the people hearing me now, forget the ones who came to the first service, forget the ones in other churches. If the people who are hearing me today, maybe I was in a congregation of about 2,000 people. He said, if the people who are hearing me now would act as Christians for 1 week, Nairobi would change. Do you agree with that picture? If just the 2,000 of us who were seated there that morning would go back to our lives and become Christians for a week, the whole world would come to know it. So, how many staff are at the University of Embu? I will estimate it at 1,000. How many people am I looking at here? Maybe a small fraction of that number.
Actually, we are much less. We are like 380.
Oh, then the representation is very good.
Yes.
Then the representation is much better than I thought. Because that means that if everybody was mentoring 20 people, the whole university would be reached. Now, when we say each one, touch one, if I'm touching you so that you will touch another person, if you think of the concept of network marketing, you'll understand this quickly. Because one person knows 2 people, and each of those 2 people know 2 people, and each of those 2 people know 2 people. This compounds very, very quickly. But this will not happen in a hard. It never happens in a hard. It only ever happens in one-to-one relationships. At the end of the day, because you will not be able to reach everybody, you are trying to pass a particular message so that this person touches another person. Now, there's several areas in which you can become a mentor to somebody. This will become individual to everybody. There's not 2 people who can offer the same kind of guidance when you're a mentor. Sometimes your mentorship will have to do with academics. And remember the people we were talking about at the beginning of this session. Maybe the person you feel grateful to is somebody who helped you in your area of academics. So maybe your mentorship will come through the area of academics. Easy to understand because we're in a learning institution. Maybe your mentorship will come through the area of career. And again, we had examples here of people who were mentored and their hand was held by somebody whose role at that point was a boss. So if you're able to hold somebody's hand and show them how they can move as far as their career is concerned, because a lot of times we really do not have somebody to let you know what is possible. Your job as a mentor is to show somebody, in whichever area we are talking, your job as a mentor is to show somebody what is possible. What is possible for me to achieve? What is possible for me to attain? So it could be in the area of career, it could be in the area of academics, but it could also be in the area of relationships. It could be in the area of relationships. If I was going to say of the 3 which is the most important, I would possibly say relationships. Because if I'm excelling in my career, if I'm excelling in my academics, but my family life is not working, none of this will be anything. So you will be called upon now. When you're in a mentorship position, and maybe that's another pitfall also to avoid. Don't think of yourself don't be idealistic in the way you look at yourself. You don't put yourself on a pedestal. The fact that I'm mentoring somebody does not mean I have qualified. The fact that I stand here and talk about mentorship does not mean I'm the authority on mentorship. I say that I do a video every week, and my video channel, my YouTube channel is known as Life Lessons. And my theme is this, and if you've heard me say that almost with every video. This is me learning aloud, because if I'm learning it, I'm teaching it. The fact that I am teaching life lessons does not mean that I have qualified in life. Far from it. What it means is that I am learning. Okay? So allow yourself, when you're speaking to your mentees, when you're interacting with your mentees, allow yourself to be learning as well. Allow yourself to be learning. Don't come to them like, I am the one who is the letter of the law. I'm the one who knows what happens here. If we are talking about academics, I will show you how it's done. We are talking about how to build your career, I'm the one who will show you how it's run. Far from it. You are on a journey as well. The best mentors are the people who have mentors of their own. The best mentees are the ones who are also mentoring somebody. So it's always a chain. It's always a chain. So I want to say this to close before I invite questions. Let us go back where we started. Let us think back. For those who joined us after we had already started, we started by taking a moment of silence and thinking of one person in your life without whom you would not be lying here today. And everybody has such a person. We shared a few examples. Some are parents, some are teachers, some are bosses. Some might even be friends. Some might be neighbors. Some might just be somebody in the neighborhood. I have a friend who was put through school by a lady who was a neighbor. She coincidentally was the headmistress of a primary school. Actually, another primary school. She was actually moved to be in the primary school where this lady was. And this lady just took it upon herself to help this girl. She was from a very poor family. Her dad had died. And eventually this lady held her hand, made sure she got to a good high school. And that's where I eventually met her in high school. And she was literally brought to school by this lady. And these are the people we are saying you can never thank enough. You will simply never be able to thank them. So I want you to take your thoughts back to the person that you wrote down. I want you to make a commitment to yourself that as your thank you to that person, as your reward, we agreed you're not able to pay back that favor. As your reward to that person, you're going to help just one person. You might end up helping 20, but at the time you're speaking with me, you are thinking, I am going to help Christine as my thank you to Mr. Muturi who helped me in primary school. In this conversation with Christine, I am thanking my teacher, my father, whomever I can't repay today. Some of the mentors we're talking about are not even alive. And because I can't thank them, and if they were, there's nothing I can possibly give them. We say today it's impossible to calculate how much was spent on your schooling, and it is possible to write a check for that amount. But it would not repay your parents for the sacrifices that they made, for what they did for you when you couldn't do it for yourself. So whenever you're in a conversation with your mentee, whenever somebody calls you when you have something else you needed to be doing, whenever you need to put your own interests aside, you have reports to finish, you have your children to deal with, but here is somebody who needs you to spend some time with them. Whenever a sacrifice is called of you, remember the one person you thought of during this training, who you couldn't thank. And as your reward, as your gratitude to them, mentor another person. That is where I close, and I would invite any questions that we have before my time is over. I have about 5 or so minutes.
I have a question. How do we deal with the different personalities? Because we are totally different and we have different personalities. How do we go about that?
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. These people, I don't want to go into the depths of personalities and everything like that. It's a very well talked about subject. And we all know we have different temperaments and personality types, which we cannot change. They are inborn. Now, I would keep in mind that opposites attract. The reason you're able to point out what I'm doing wrong is you're not of my personality type, so it's visible to you. You know, when you're standing in a lake, you don't see any water? If there was a bad smell in this room, none of us would be aware of it. If someone came from outside, they would smell it straight away, okay? Because we have been in this room, we are familiar with it. Those things that may be a challenge for me may not be visible to me, but because you're an opposite to me in one way or another, you are able to point those out. You want to be gentle, especially when it comes to correction. You want to be very, very gentle. Don't talk down at people, because you have agreed unless you're connecting to me, I will not even hear you. So don't talk at them. But you will remember we had said in an earlier session that you won't reach them all. You won't reach them all. Remove the pressure from yourself to reach everybody. It is not, even God does not expect you to reach everybody. But if you think each one reach one. So if you're thinking, if I couldn't reach Christine, then I could reach this other person. Okay? So this one is the one I will pour into, this one is the one I will do my best. So that each person you're talking to looks like an individual. So you won't be able to reach them all. But remember that variation in your personality is actually the best. It's an advantage to where you're able to identify where they might be having challenges or where they might be excelling. Because yourself, you could be an introverted sort of personality. So you're able to see that this is an outgoing, flamboyant person. So you're able to encourage them to go ahead. Reminds me of one point I had not written down on the pitfalls. This one should have been number 1. Don't ever get competitive with your mentee. Don't get competitive with your mentee. I can't believe I forgot to write that down. The biggest. It is the biggest. Don't feel threatened by your juniors. Don't feel threatened by your juniors. Please put your pens down and do this. Just do what I'm doing. Just indulge me. How much space is up here?
About
Unlimited.
unlimited. I like that.
Am I making the point?
Yes.
It's a lot easier than to do this. Down here, there is not too much space, but up here, there is unlimited space.
He says it's not real. Maybe she can expand on that.
That's a philosophical issue, but up here there are spells who you can't eat with your hands. So you have to remember up here. Yes, as much as it is free, I think there are also other people who are up here who are not just very easy.
Okay, let's not go into philosophy. I am cognizant that I'm in a university, so we will not go into it.
Yes, it is philosophical because but it's important. It's important to recognize that even as you enter the college, you also know that those are people who make you humble also. Yeah, they also make you humble as an mentor because then you are aware that even if the space that way is free, I'm also under. So I think it's a very
in terms of an institution,
even life generally. Because my father and mother are there, my older siblings are there.
No, they are not. You know, I'm standing here trying to humbly disagree with you. I come from a totally different train of thought, but your boss is not occupying any space that is yours.
That is true.
And neither is your junior. We are all walking our path. Who told you that your path is in the University of Embu?
I agree.
That's not your path.
I think it's important we see it with a very open mind. Because for me, even as I mentor, I'm also aware that I'm being mentored. And it is true, you can remove people from occupying the space up there. But
by moving elsewhere,
or by doing other things.
Yes.
But I think appreciating that prepares me to be settled. Yeah, it prepares me to be aware that the space is not really, and I have somebody who says the empty space is also speak. So there is speaking in empty spaces. So I think being aware of that, I think makes me, now I'm speaking as me who is a mentee by other people and appreciate that as I also work with those that are down here, I'm also subject, even if they are not seen, even if they are not available, I'm aware that they are there. I think that's why I say it depends on who you look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I may just chip in, I think one of the first issue that we need to get through is the scarcity mentality, where we always believe that every resource is scarce. And that is what brings in the issue of a competitive environment, whereby probably you are supposed to mentor somebody in terms of career advancement, and then you start believing that this person in the next 2 years may be better than I am, or may even take over my position. And this space example you've given, look at the airspace in terms of the aircrafts in the air. And if you ever bother to look at how many aircrafts are in the air, at any given time, you cannot feel that space. Like the African space actually in terms of aircraft occupation is almost free. But if one aircraft is flying here, another one can fly there, another one can fly there, and this space is to be very difficult to feel. So if we have that mentality that there is enough for everybody, that would be one of the best ways of all of us mentoring each other and knowing that you are not supposed to be competing. That's the way I would
Just to pick up from what you're saying, and this is my last remark. Prof, we've been following to the minute. This guy's a timekeeper, so I am going to be here for the next 30 seconds.
No, maybe I just needed to point out.
I'm actually.
I think the discussion should be a little bit more exhaustive.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
You have time up to 12:45. The 10:30 was mainly in terms of
My session.
putting the things on the table, and then from there you take over the space under the guidance of Dr. Ngalala. Now to get us through that open space which has no limits.
I just give the example you example you gave just brought to mind a report that happened at one time when there was an air crash. There was a 737 Boeing that had crashed. I don't remember in which country at that point. But a TV report, a news report struck me because they said 737 is the most popular brand of passenger aircraft. And they said at any one time in the US, there's 1,000 of them in the air. I was like, excuse me, what? 1,000 of one brand of aircraft. So how many aircrafts are in the air? And that is the US. There's the rest of the world. And there's more water than land in the world. So I'm assuming there's more aircraft flying through the seas.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, if I'm not flying, it is definitely not from shortage of aircraft. Don't you think? But I like what he's saying. I promise you there's no limits in the world. There are no limits in the world. Let us not think of my boss is the dean and the dean's boss is the DVC and the DVC's boss is the vice chancellor. That is all I'm seeing. That's a very narrow way of looking at life. That is a very, very narrow way of looking at life. A, you don't have always to be at the University of Embu. B, you don't even have to be at a university. C, you don't even have to be employed.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody I tell you, there is nobody who is walking your path. Nobody is walking. We've even had tragic stories of parents who put their own children down.
Yes, yes.
You want to be the doctor in the family, your child must be junior to you. Remember what we said in the first pitfall. Don't look for adoration. Don't look for adoration. Everybody in the world is walking their path. And even this season of life, they are going to be your mentees. Careful, they could be your mentor tomorrow.
Yeah.
They could be your mentor tomorrow. If you think through your life, there's people you looked up to. Maybe when you are still in school, maybe at the beginning of your career, there's people you really looked up to completely. And today they look up to you. There's people like that in the world. And it's not right or wrong. It's just life. It's just life. Today, you're in a particular place. Tomorrow, you will be in another place. None of that is good or bad. Everybody is walking their own path. There is nobody who occupies a position where you would be today. And there is no place you're occupying today which someone else should be at. Your life will happen the way it's destined to. Another person's life will happen. Lift another person. Because when you do yourself, you move up higher. That has been my experience throughout life. Whenever you're in a position, I cannot count you the number of times I have sat down with people and told them how to write a book. This is how a book is written. I did this, then I did this, then I did. Don't do this to waste your money. Do this, because I've had the experience. It's been said that experience is the teacher of fools. You have to wait to fall in this pit to know there is a pit. If Christine fell in front of you, why are you falling? Learn from her. Alright? So, do not ever feel threatened by somebody that works below you. They are not a challenge to you. They are younger and more educated, more energetic and everything, but they are not taking anything away from you. In fact, if you can grow them, the better. You want to get out of where you are. The previous generation who worked to retirement, that's a dying generation. That will not exist anymore. If anybody here has got children who are finishing school and going into college, they will tell you. I remember at one point I was running at my business, we had a staff meeting. And I was telling them, and I had all these millennials working for me. And I told them, guys, and we had one of our staff members just vanish. Just one day not show up and never be heard from again. And I told them, guys, this is a job, it's not a prison sentence. If you're planning to leave, tell me you're planning to leave so that we can transition you neatly. We can get somebody else, have you teach them what you're doing, and live nicely. I don't expect any of you to be here forever. You're not my children. Even my children will not be in my house forever. So I told them, how long would you like to be here? And one guy said, I plan to be here long term. I'm going to be here till December. That is how the millennials think. That is how they think. I do career talks all the time. I'm actually doing a career talk next week in the high school that I went. We are coming as alumni to speak to the students. And this generation of people, you tell them, take a job so that you can learn from the job. I remember one lady getting a job with the Nation newspapers. Nation, media. And 2 months later, she said, now I've learned from here. I'm ready for my new job. 2 months. That's how the millennials think. So it's only those fossils in our minds that think that 20 years from today, I want to be in this job. That is a dying generation. That is a dying generation. So don't feel, I think we have made that point already. Don't feel threatened by your juniors. Don't feel threatened by your mentees. You do better when they do better. All right? Any other question?
Yeah, maybe it's just a bit of a follow-up. I heard you say a bit being gentle. At the same time, you gave an example where this kind of narrative told her, you must take your parents from here to there. Quite often when you're mentoring, is a time not really just gentle to transform somebody. So what is the balance? Then before then, I leave, there are quite a number of things now that we of course, we are here to learn from each other. The aspect between the mentorship, the guidance, I think, or coaching, and probably counseling. Probably it's good we get it right so that none replaces the other one. Of course, maybe there's a comment. As you mentioned, and I think I'm following the Dr. Moduli's question about the difficult people. Probably may not have answered the question, and I think this is what you're saying. True, I think we do not hear this. There is always joy in having them, because remember, as a mentor, you pull. You are pulling somebody from, and like Prof said, experience are different. I'll be pulling here, but when I go to school of education, I'll be pulled. When I go to there, I'll be pulled. So the issue is, there's always space here. I feel the same when geography, they were hiring the school at the car. The school at the space is no competition. However, getting the dean what you were saying, when you talk of social effect, the more you have here, because you don't remember the ratios of men and women. Where there is men and there is no. But I think we have debated the question of Muturi, the difficult people, and I think that is where it was coming. Because the difficult people, there is always a time also they learn, so that when they say they are moved, and that's what I'm relating to that. It's a time to insert a little bit of trust. That the trust enables somebody to wake up. And when they wake up, then the years, this person on the phone. I think that was a comment. But
okay.
The other one,
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, I like what I'm just commenting on what I took down as you were speaking. First, you talked about tough love. As parents, there is tough love, right? There is the things you say no to out of love. Your child will ask you to hold something hot, and out of love, you will restrain them because you have the benefit of experience. So that is called for. That is called for. Now, where do you strike the balance between being tough and being gentle? That is a discretionary sort of, because there are no hard and fast rules. Because you have made a connection with the person, just make sure you don't break them. Make sure you don't break them. And breaking them would look like this. When you, for example, attack somebody, you can tell me that what I'm doing is wrong. You can even tell me what I'm doing is foolish without calling me a foolish person. You understand? Mm-hmm. That is the difference. When you label me, when you tell me that's a very silly thing you're doing, that's different from saying that you're a very silly person. Yeah? Depending on your relationship, you will find a way to be tough without breaking them. Because when you break somebody, they build a wall. I remember being told this when my children first became teenagers, and I was told, if you want to be the go-to, if you want to be the person that they tell, don't look shocked when they tell you things. I am the mother of daughters. I have 4 daughters. The first ones were twins. So when they became a teenager, first of all, I approached teenage of my children with fear and trembling. You know all the things you hear. When they become teenagers, they become mad, they go berserk, they go crazy. I was very, very nervous of my children becoming teenagers. But there is one conference we went to in church that one lady spoke to us and really, really encouraged me. And I remember that coming out of that. And of course, you relate with other parents and everything. And the one thing I was told is, when your child tells you a story, don't look shocked. Because what will happen? If a child is 13 years old and comes and tells you, remember when you went to Akina so when you were having this, the Christmas party or whatever it is that was happening, do you know this and this and this boy? And she names a cousin or she names somebody, he was trying to kiss me on the mouth. That's a 13-year-old telling you. As a parent, your hairs are standing. But you'll, okay. So what did you do? Because you want to make sure that the channel of communication stays open. Because if you depending on how you react, you don't want to lecture. If, for example, your parents were lecturing you, I'm not going to talk about you and your children, let's talk about your parents. When your parents were lecturing you, what was the most likely thing you did? You zoned out, true or false? Yeah. When the teacher came, I remember a teacher would walk in class and not teach the subject. They would just talk to us. You girls must qualify to go to university. Do you understand? And they talk and talk and talk and talk. I remember one teacher made us stand up the whole lesson. We were on our feet. I need you to listen to me. Stand up, all of you. And you can see their passion. They are trying to get you to go where you're going. All right? But that amount of lecturing, most of the girls, what do? We zone out. We just stand there and look at the teacher with a glazed look on our eyes. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to the person. And remember what we said, don't give the message, be the message. If I am mentoring you in the area of fitness, there is much more learning to be done by you observing me waking up in this weather to go jogging because I jog every morning at 6:30. There is much more learning there than me telling you go and jog. Me jogging is a bigger message than me telling you how to jog. Alright? Because we don't take advice from somebody you will not take cooking lessons from someone who can't cook. So be the message. Now, from Professor's other comment, where is the line between coaching, between mentoring, and between counseling? I'm not going to give my own layman understanding. Mentorship, which is our subject here today, is relationship. Mentorship is relationship. Mentorship is where you learn from me. You borrow from my life. You kind of become a role model. That is what I understand by mentorship. Coaching, a lot of the times, is, for the most part, especially in the business side, coaching is paid for. Coaching is something that is paid for. If I am a speaker and I'm looking for a coach, there are people who will offer services of coaching and we will have scheduled meetings. There's life coaches, there's all sorts of coaches. Now, a coach is not necessarily doing what I want to do. All right? A swimming coach does not get wet. The first time I went to be taught how to swim, I was surprised that the coach was standing outside wearing a tracksuit. He told me, get in. I got in. If you do exactly what he'll tell you, you will float to the end of the pool. You do exactly what he's telling you to do. He will not get wet. Most football coaches are not playing football. Some of them did before, some have never. But if you do what they're telling you to do, you will succeed. That's a coach. So a mentor is someone, in my own understanding, I like to call my mentor is someone who has been where I'm trying to go and is willing to hold my hand. That is my own layman understanding of what a mentor is, as opposed to a coach. A coach may never have gone where I'm going. But a coach has studied and made it their business to learn success principles. And success principles are transferable. That's why somebody will be an expert in something, but when they go on a TV interview, you hear them being asked about advice on how to raise children. You hear celebrities being asked about how to stay married when they are 5 times divorced. Because we are assuming that if you can be a pro athlete, an Olympian, Olympians are going on, if you can be an Olympian, there is something you know that you could teach us, which is true. Because success principles are transferable. So a coach may not be a professor. Somebody could coach you into academic excellence who themselves are not academic excellent people. All right? You could be coached in business to become a millionaire by somebody who may not have as much money themselves, but not mentorship. Mentorship is somebody who has been where you're trying to go and is willing to hold your hand. That is my understanding. Now, counseling is, in my mind, a professional it's a professional sort of undertaking. Most of the people who are counselors will be trained in psychology, and what counselors do is they guide you most of the time out of a problem. Maybe a situation is going on and you're recovering from grief or something like that. The one thing which the dean mentioned which really struck me was some of the people who have been mentors for us may not be aware. That really, really struck me. The names we wrote down in the morning, some of them may not be aware. Even as you spoke, I mentioned my teacher, Mrs. Kaigwa. Mrs. Kaigwa possibly doesn't know the kind of influence she had on me. She was just teaching children. But she really touched me, and I was in the formative years. All right? So there might be somebody who is basically role modeling their life after you that you're not even aware of. Remember we said you're never not teaching? There's people who are looking up to you right now who don't even have your number saved. They don't have a one-on-one relationship with you, but they are really looking up to you. They are really, really looking up to you. So let's not get caught in the terms, in the definitions, in what am I a mentor here, or am I a coach, or am I a counselor? Let's not get caught up in the terms. Let's just think of it this way. I just want to have influence. If I can have influence and a positive influence on another person, I will be paying back my debt to the universe. I will be paying back my debt if I can just be of influence. All right? I think that's a good place for me to hand over back to the chair.
Maybe just before you hand over, I would like to, we don't say a very distinct, clear-cut boundary between those three terms. It all depends on circumstances. It all depends on individuals that you are dealing with. It's not like 1, 2, 3, where we know there's a difference between 1 and 2. And I would like to demonstrate by using a case. A quick one. These were students, they were not staff. But my first year here in 2018, I think Dr. Phyllis, you may know this student, there was someone called Wakasiaka, another one called Maingi, another one called Nanga. Those were very naughty guys. So the first lesson I had is that they used to sit at the back. Wakasiaka was always drunk and very dirty. And in the middle of their lecture or discussions, they would giggle out and make very funny jokes. So I had to, being new in the university, I said, now what do I do with these students? Do I lose my cool or what do I do? I just took it easy. I came and discussed with two of my colleagues. They told me, forget about those guys. They are always like that. Let them finish and go. So the next thing I did, I listened to them again. They made their usual jokes. And I thought that these are difficult individuals that at least we can talk to. So I told Wakasiaka, why don't you, my friend, help me carry this LCD to the vehicle? So Wakasiaka accompanied me. We walked to the vehicle, we talked. I told him, you are like my son. Some of these things, you guys, you are very smart. I praised him in one way or another. Then the second time I got the three of them, one of them I told him, carry the laptop, you carry the extension cord, you carry the LCD. Then we went again. So I told Wakasiaka, I think what you do, how can I help you to change the way you behave, the way you dress or whatever? He said, I promise that I'm going to change. So the following lesson, he actually came dressed very well. So I made him stand in class and I told him, look at this gentleman, he's one of the greatest in this class. And I praised him. From that day, Wakasiaka changed.
Emotional connection.
And he started dressing, and every time he came to class, he used to tell me, you know what? Now look how smart I am. And this is the Wakasiaka that we are talking about.
Wow.
You know, this gentleman was like a wreck. But he got a job with the bank, and he's working there, and we are always in touch. So that's why I believe that one of the things that you need to understand, first of all, why is this person behaving the way they are behaving? Yes. What are the aspirations of this person? What is the circumstances surrounding him? And the most important, what is the entry point? That is what I learned from the life that I saw from this gentleman, because Dr. Phyllis, I'm sure you know Wakasiaka. He was very bad. But now, he is a well-groomed man, and we are always in touch.
There is always a reason why people behave the way they behave. As you spoke, I remembered a very touching story that was told by a teacher who said she had a student who was always untidy, who was always smelling bad, and she was very tempted to ignore him. And she would take pleasure in writing F on his paper. But as a requirement of their class, when you teach a particular class, you are required to read the report of all their previous teachers. So he read the first grade teacher who had said, this is a very promising boy, he's very enthusiastic, he makes good friends with his students. She couldn't believe she's reading about the same person. Then the second grade teacher said, this is a very bright boy, but the circumstances in his family are heavy on him. His mother's illness has been a problem. Then the third grade teacher said, this boy has gone back into a shell ever since his mother has died. He's not getting very good care at home. His father is a drunk, his mother has died. Now, she's the fourth grade teacher. Do you think she changed her attitude to that boy? She completely embraced that boy. She said in her words, from that day henceforth, I stopped teaching English and math, and I started teaching children. She stopped teaching subjects. She started to teach children. And the boy went on to become a medical doctor. It's a very similar story to what Dr. is talking about. Whenever people are behaving a particular way, there's always a reason. We had this neighbor at one point, and I also remember this when he was speaking. You know how you have this neighbor, you're very familiar with them, you eat out of their kitchen, they eat out of your kitchen, they go to your fridge and take tomatoes. You know, you have neighbors like that.
Yeah.
At that one point, I had a neighbor, a family who lived next to us, and we were family, literally. Now, instead of going out of our gate and around into the other gate, the children poked a hole in the fence where they would go through. There was a hedge planted, and then there was some, so they pushed the wire and they started to go through because it's too much. You get out and walk around the other side, now and up all 10 times a day. So a particular boy, the young son in that family, was the chief of this hole. And I wanted the hedge to grow and look nice. It was hurting the look of the garden. To have a hole in the fence. It wasn't a security risk at all because it was a gated community, there's a bigger fence. These were just small hedges between the houses. But it was hurting the ambience. So I called him. I told him, from today henceforth you're in charge of it. If anybody passes here, you tell me. Okay? No passing here. People will be going, you're the one who will tell me. What do you think happened to the hedge? It grew back. The same when he told that young man, you are looking so smart today. People don't usually hear you when you beat them down. People hear you when you raise them up. When you tell a boy, you are in charge of this compound, don't ever let anybody pass here again. Tell me if anyone passes. He's the one who's to pass there. It ended that day. It ended that day. So that's an excellent example. That's an excellent. And how does it feel when he calls you?
Actually, it feels very nice because what I always tell him is exactly what you're telling us. But if I made a difference in you, make sure you make a difference in one other person, then we shall have a better society. I think that is the message.
Beautiful.
That,
Beautiful. I can completely relate with that. All right. Chair, I think our work is done. Thank you very much. I think I'll take my seat at this point.
Now,
Next question. There was fact-finding to come and have this session. I spoke to one of the people in the mentoring committee that set up this meeting. And she told me that you guys were chosen by the people you're supposed to mentor. And that is how you got in this seat. And I thought that was brilliant. Because you can't force mentorship on someone. You can't force mentorship on someone. To use an example, and I've talked to the time when my children were first becoming teenagers, I remember a lady walking up to me one day and telling me, I'm going to be mentoring your daughter. And I was like, She was appointing herself as a mentor for my daughter. Now, among us mothers, if we can mentor each other's children, it's a beautiful thing. But I thought she was overreaching a little because she's already approaching my child and offering her lunch. Let's go and have lunch. She probably meant well. But as the mother, I was a bit alarmed. Because she was offering her services, I'm not sure it went any further than the first lunch, but I was a bit alarmed, and it is what Dr. is talking about. Do you make yourself the mentor? Now, this is what I would do, because the idea of mentorship has already been floated. I'm assuming that the entire university knows that there's mentorship now beginning to happen. So, if you are supposed to mentor a specific group, category of people, what I would do if I was in your shoes is I would call a meeting. And I would make it as informal as possible, and I would involve food. Because human beings relate around food. Why
I
does
hope the BBC is
the DBC it need not be elaborate. Let's get serious.
The first meeting will have food.
Let's get serious. It need not be something elaborate. All right? Let's not look for obstacles.
Yeah.
But human beings do relate well around food. Why does a couple going out go for dinner? Because food has a way of opening a conversation. We are looking for emotional connection. You can share a cup of tea, but don't let somebody come to your office and you speak to them across the desk. The desk is a symbol of authority. Don't talk to people across your desk. That's not mentorship. Come down to their level. Speak to them. I remember at one point a gentleman who runs a very big company in Nairobi. I'm not going to name it because it's quoted in the stock exchange. He needed some tax break or something like that changed. And he got an appointment to go and see the governor of Central Bank. He was shivering in his boots. He was giving this speech and I'm thinking, you were shivering. You know what they didn't say? Every mentor has a mentor. People who are intimidated by you, even you, there's someone that intimidates you, okay? This guy runs a huge company, but he had an appointment to see the governor of Central Bank. He was shivering, all right? And so he arrived at the appointed time. And the governor, who was obviously very wise, met him at the appointed time, personally ushered him into his office. Those people usually have large offices, eh? You enter the office and then you walk a mile to see the person. Because the desk is, he met him at the door. He sat him down in the sitting area. You know, in the sofas? Yes. He sat him down. He asked him, what would you like to drink? It was a 7 a.m. meeting. What are we doing with breakfast? Can I offer you a cup of tea or coffee? The governor. How many people do you think are available to serve the governor? The governor poured his tea. How many sugars? He took quite a bit of time to put him at ease so that then they could have a conversation. Now, what I would do if I was in your shoes is I would have an open meeting. I would say, guys, let's have a cup of tea. Guys, let's all meet together and have a cup of tea. Let's
Has defined.
That's one.
Okay. Let's go back to where we began. Let us go back to where we began. Did we agree in this room that we owe a debt we cannot pay?
Yes.
Please be willing to go into your own pocket for this tea.
Yes.
You owe a debt you cannot pay.
Rob has not done that.
Let us get serious.
And that's why I say I personally find it easier to take mentorship as discipleship because you must be willing. It costs you.
We already said it will cost you time, it will even cost you now, even resources.
It will
Yes.
cost you even
Your privacy. These are people you will invite to your living room. These are people you will see in your own house. Did we not say sometimes they call you at odd times?
Yes.
They will call you at home on a Saturday afternoon. You tell them, come to my house. Please be okay to offer something. Be okay to offer something. Because you are teaching this person. And remember, we agreed at the beginning. You are doing this to pay your rent to the universe. Because it is because, don't lose sight of that fact. That it is because of this person, and you wrote down the name of that person, that I am seated in this position today. That today in the University of Embu, I can be called a mentor is thanks to Miss So-and-so, thanks to Mr. So-and-so. So if it takes me going into my pocket to offer them something to eat, if it takes me giving you a copy of my book at no cost, these are all things that will enhance the mentoring relationship. But the biggest cost I can promise you is your time. Is your time. Because I can assure you the governor of Central Bank has things to do other than stir sugar into tea. He has more important things to do that determine the value of the shilling. But he took the time to see this person at their level. So I would call a meeting, and then out of that meeting, keeping in mind that I will not reach everybody. Those who will now then seek my mentorship, then I will go on to have a much closer relationship with those ones. Because I will talk to people in a group, 10 or 20 or even 50, but out of those, there will always be the people who will talk to you. Yeah? I think so. That's the way I would go it. I'm not saying that it is textbook. There are really no hard and fast answers here, but that is how I would approach it. All right? I think that answers that.
Maybe another something small to that.
Someone asking you to mentor them, and also the across gender. You want to be slightly cautious. Please be my mentor. Why do I want you to be your mentor? I love what you have just said. Is it a shortcut? Am I looking for particular favors because we now know each other, we now talk regularly, I now drink tea in your house? Am I thinking this will lead to a promotion? Am I thinking this will allow me to get away with some things because now I have this relationship with the boss or with the head of department? So you want to examine their intentions. And the same across the gender. It's a good idea for us to also be open-eyed, because across the gender, if I am looking to indulge in somebody of the opposite gender, would it be very easy to say, let's have this mentorship relationship? And that would happen even with the students. We all know these stories that happen. Somebody approaching the lecturer who is of the opposite gender, trying to earn their A, all right? So sometimes they are looking to trap you. Sometimes they are looking for other. It may not be what is. So you want to be open-minded about it, a little cautious about it. I think the discussion has summed it up very, very well. You might want to examine. It's not everyone who comes for mentorship. It is a feel-good when someone tells me they want me to mentor them. It's a feel-good for sure, but it may not be genuine. It may not be that somebody actually requires mentorship. So I think that was an excellent summary.